Welcome to the GAN project. I'm Kedar Nimkar, and today we have an amazing conversation with veteran filmmaker and a life coach Aruna Raje Patil, a creative force who went from medical school to making groundbreaking films like Firebrand and Rihai. In this episode, we deep dive into the art of learning and unlearning. Aruna Rajesh shares why everyone is both a student and a teacher, how cinema can revolutionize education, and why questioning everything is crucial for growth. We explore the difference between knowledge and wisdom, discuss filmmakers' responsibility in shaping society, and hear powerful stories from her journey into India's most challenging social realities. Whether you're a young designer, artist, educator, or simply someone passionate about lifelong learning, hope this conversation will challenge your perspectives and inspire you to see art, education, and life itself differently. Let's begin. Welcome, Aruna ma'am, to the GAN project, and thanks for giving your time. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
So I've divided this conversation into two parts. First off is kind of learning. I wanted to understand your thoughts about learning, acquiring knowledge, and so on and so forth. And the second is about how media influences learning, given your background in films and other places. So the first thing is who, according to you, is a student, a teacher? Are there more degrees in that?
Yeah, I think everybody is a student and everybody is a teacher. I mean, that sounds like a very simplistic answer, but actually, it has a lot of layers. Because if you're open and you're open to learning, then you're learning all your life. I mean, I'm almost 79 now and I'm still learning. So, and I'm learning new things. I mean, new discoveries, small things that I knew before. Now I'm looking at them in a different way, learning something new. Then there are actually new things to be learned and so much to be realized and discovered. And there is literally so much knowledge in the world, so much information that one lifetime is not enough. So then you keep learning. And I think what's important is if you keep learning, you keep growing also. And that's the best part because then somewhere you remain the child. And every now and then I go and join some course or something just for the heck of learning something completely new that I've not done before. So that just keeps me energized also. And that's why you're a learner. But as a teacher, I think again, there's a lot that you have to impart. Now, mostly what happens when people say teaching, they teach a subject. And then it's very narrow. The thing is, there's so much else to teach. And even if you don't intend to teach, you end up teaching many things to the person who's across, and you learn where the bad habits come from. Nobody intends to learn bad habits, but somebody is teaching without speaking and they learn.
When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Oh, yeah, I believe that. Absolutely. When the student is ready to learn, because you see, the universe has its own way of doing things or making things happen. Now, if there is a yearning somewhere, you want to something more, the teacher does appear. And you cannot organize that yourself. Even if you want, you can't get it. You cannot manage that. And the universe, when the time is right, universe will send you a teacher. And people come and go in your life all the time. They give you something, they go away, you never see them for the rest of your life. So the teacher does appear. But we like to believe as human beings that we can have some causality. So now, how do I get a teacher that I'm looking for? And I think what one does then, is put a very powerful intention in the universe and allow it to manifest. But again, you can't say which minute, which second the teacher is going to appear. Suddenly, there is somebody you meet a new or something you read and you've discovered you've got a new teacher. And I think that universal thing, if you believe in universe, it's magical.
Yeah, I mean, when you bring in this cosmic angle to it, it's very, very profound and interesting. But if we bring it down to more mainstream or more practical aspects of it, I've seen that typically students are put in a spot, right? I mean, traditionally, how education system is designed, they are supposed to kind of prove themselves and learn and acquire knowledge. So academically, if the student doesn't do well, shouldn't be the teacher who's supposed to be punished here, or it typically happens the other way around? So I was just wondering, what are your thoughts around it?
Well, if the student does not do academically well, I don't think you should blame the teacher entirely because you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. Now, you have to figure out what is the real issue there. Now, if there's a bad teacher, then I think almost all will perform badly. I mean, all students might perform badly. If the teacher is really useless, I mean, there are people like that who are just doing their jobs and they come and they mark and they go away. But then there are other teachers who, the thing is, now the student may be put there by force by his parents to learn something that he doesn't want to learn. This is a very common practice now. I don't know about other places, but in India, surely you have to become a graduate. You must do commerce. You must do engineering. And even in films, you'll find people coming to the film institute. So many are coming from the engineering background. Now, I was a medical student. I went into films. So when you have to do something to please your parents or to get into a societal acceptance, then you do things and then you may not perform well,
Hmm.
and because you want to do something else. And the shining example right in front of you, I was doing medicine, not because my parents stopped me from going into films, but it wasn't accepted. And a girl going into movies, girls from good families didn't go to movies. So I had to willy-nilly choose something else, and I chose medicine. But guess what? I failed in my anatomy. Now, who is to be blamed? Because my head was in the stars and stories, and God knows, and those dead bodies one had to cut up. I was feeling very sorry and wondering how they landed up there, rather than find that particular nerve or muscle or something like that when I was
Hmm.
dissecting. So, I mean, who do I blame then? And I think one has to take responsibility for one's. The other thing is, sometimes you do find students who are not happy being there, but then it's
Hmm.
up to the teacher to find a way to make it interesting or to inculcate or bring something to the party so that the guy, even though he has to now, he's forced to sit 2 years in a college and doing a degree he doesn't want to do. Now it's up to the teacher to try and, figure out a way to get him interested in whatever it may be, science or literature or any other subject. Otherwise, he's going to fail, sure, like I did in my anatomy.
No, in fact, we are fortunate because even if you didn't find the nerve, I think you have found the right pulse of audience through your films. So, so yeah, it's a good thing for us. But then, if I have to take it further, abstract, and then what is learning, right? I mean, again, a simplistic question, but can have profound meaning. So, how do you define learning then?
See, learning is, I think, keeping yourself open, like willing to receive new information, new perspectives, new paradigms, and anything that is new. Because you see, what happens is learning is allows you to grow and allows you to expand yourself, because when you stop learning, you become very limited. And learning is something when you open yourself and you receive everything that comes to you, good, bad, and ugly, whatever it is, you may figure it out later. What was it worth? But
Hmm.
the same time, keeping yourself like, because all of us live with a lot of preconceived notions. Sometimes people say something and say, where are you coming from? We don't mean whether you're coming from some location. Where we are saying is, where is your thinking coming from? So if you're stuck somewhere, and then you don't grow. But if you allow yourself to be open, and that is why learning is something all the time, being open to new things, new ideas, new thoughts. I think that's learning for me.
But you have been a life, as in you are a life coach also. So wanted to ask, how can you be open to learning? Because people start with some disposition, and then it's very difficult to unlearn and then be a blank slate every time. So are there any tricks or observations which has helped to kind of keep it open all the time?
Yeah, this is everybody asks for tips actually and tricks, as you said. That's what everyone is looking for. What I would say, an access to how do I actually, you have, when you were 10 years old, you had certain ideas about certain things. When you were 20, you were different. When you were 25, you were different. When you were 35, 40, you're different. So all the time you are changing your own perspective. But some things you're very rigid. No, SIM is SIM, which means you're
Hmm.
stuck in that place. Now, the choice, I think you also are exercising a certain choice sometimes to be stuck. Because that rigidity doesn't make your life easy, it just makes your life difficult and makes the life of other people around you difficult. Because
Hmm.
any rigid person, to live with that person is very hard. So the thing
Hmm.
is, when the access you're asking is being present in the present moment. Being present means
Hmm.
being aware, being living in the moment, living in the present moment, and checking what is my. You see, we talk about a voice in the head, and that voice is a 24/7 voice. It's pushed on talking and telling you about, look how he's sitting, look how he's looking, look at his face, look at his head, look at all the time commenting, when commentary is going on. So now, if you're aware that something else is running the show and not yourself, because then, because what happens when you react, that is what is reacting. Maybe if you
Hmm.
gave it a few moments, you wouldn't react like that, perhaps. So again, we come into the thing of reaction versus response. So the thing is being aware. When you're aware, I think that is the biggest key, biggest access in all coaching or whatever, in any wherever you're stuck. Just being aware. Once you're aware, this is what I'm doing, and I'm reacting, or I'm whatever. This is what I'm confronting, and this is who I am or who I'm not. And then you can find a way out of that mess or out of that wherever you're stuck.
Very beautiful. I've done Vipassana, so I can connect with this, because that's where they say that there is a little gap between uh, intelligence acting on your on your input, and then you are going to process the reaction. There's a slight delay in that. If you can somehow tap into that small space of not reacting, perhaps you can land up in better response than just reaction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
That's right. And it's just matter of practice. Initially, most of the time when you're coaching somebody, they come, I said, "You tell me when you caught it." It's well after the horse has bolted from the stables, you catch it. And so, oh, I reacted like that, that happened. Okay, now good, you've begun to notice. Now start reducing the gap and see very often there's something called a red flag. When you're saying something, I can see some energy rising, गुस्सा आ रहा है या कुछ और हो रहा है, your anxiety आ रहा है, something is happening inside you, and that is a red flag. Suppose you being saying something to me, or you're being rude, or you're being strict, or being, angry with me. Now something is rising inside me as I see you. So now it can be anxiety because I'm afraid of what will happen now, or I'm angry also. I'm like, how do I give it back to you? Because my blood has begun to slowly simmer, and it'll boil and it'll become an outburst. So you have to catch these red flags.
So I ask about learning, but is there any classical way in India that learning was practiced?
In practical life, in today's life, you see, first thing is you must find time. Today, nobody has time, and everybody is after money. I'm joining that too because that's what I'm seeing all around. People do not want to spend the amount of time they have to spend on their job. They want a shortcut, they want quick money, and they're in a hurry. So you have to, Therao is very important. Therao means being stable, being steady, sthirata, where you can actually look at yourself and where are you heading and what are you doing and what do you really want in your life. So this, unless somebody, I think today's time mentors are very important. Now, what used to happen in the early classical Gurukul system, you were with the Guru, you learned what you had to learn, plus you learned so many other things. There was a practical life there. You were learned to get along with other people. You learned a lot of skills. You learned philosophy. You learned science. You learned scriptures. You learned so many things. I mean, so it was an all-round learning. Even look at the Zen way. Now, you first see all these interesting Zen films we have seen. They don't tell you anything. They just make you do something, and you realize that self-realization is the best way to learn, actually. And that is why, when things are given to you, unless you experience it for yourself, you have not learned, or you have actually found your way through that entangled information that is there. It all looks like Greek and Hebrew and Latin and God knows what when you get into a new subject or a new topic. But then as you tease it apart and you take it apart, and suddenly it becomes yours when you can actually own it.
Yeah. No, when you spoke about this, I always remember the Karate Kid movie where there's wax on, wax off, and they keep practicing, and then one day you understand that this was part of the learning itself.
That's
But
right.
then, yeah,
Also,
sorry.
the Temple of Shaolin, all those, what were the 36 chambers, or I don't know how many chambers it was that film, and all those made them do all kinds of things, and
Yeah. No, but in that aspect, at least the olden that is I am exposed to, and I also been a little part of that learning system, is that it somehow is categorized under rote learning also. There are positives, there are negatives, but if you can share your pros and cons of this, because yeah, it's a gray area.
yeah, rote learning has its pros and cons. Surely, it's not something to be condemned for sure, because there are important things that you need to do rote learning. For example, multiplication tables, and even some of the without that, I've been when I was traveling in the US, no, people can't do simple arithmetic, simple multiplication, no, because without the calculator they can't operate. Now, all of us, we can rattle off, any number of multiplication tables, mental arithmetic. By the time the man mentions, I can't make your bill because the tiller is not working, something is not working, I cannot, something. I say, but I'll tell you the amount is the total, this is what it is. So the thing is, there are lots of things. Like basic fundamentals, Rote is important because then it is there and you can work on it. It's not enough. But what happens is today our education system is so bad that people do rote learning, kind of learning on whatever subjects, because it's all planned and for what? For getting good jobs, for lucrative
Jobs.
employment. And that cannot be the be all and end all of your education to get lucrative employment. And our education system is so narrow now, it's only for that. And
Hmm.
that's the sad part of it. Now, otherwise, rote learning at this level is fine, but you have to go beyond it. If you're stuck only with it, well, you'll do your exams, you'll get a good job, and then what? And then what? Then you're struggling in your life. Your relationships may not be working. Your, job situation, you may be running into problems. How are you going to deal with all of that? Because if there is nothing more than just what the subject you've learned, then somebody has to teach you that. If you don't learn it in school and college, where does a family have time to teach you?
Yeah.
Earlier, things got managed because there were joint families. If your father didn't teach you, your grandmother taught. Your grandmother did, your aunt would say something. Somebody else would teach. But now, today, you don't have anyone, especially if both the parents are working. Now, it's very hard. So, the question is, how parents have to find time. If it's not taught anywhere else, then
Hmm.
parents have to find time, give that quality time, and do what? Now, many people are saying, what do I talk to my child about? No. I mean, I've been asked this question. I say, spend time with your child. What do I do? I mean, usko ye khelne ko acha lagta hai. He likes to do on this thing. He likes to play. Then play with him. Play with him. Be interested in what he is interested in. Through that, you'll be able to influence him. And then slowly he'll open up and you can discuss art and you can discuss music and you discuss many things. But if you're not willing to open up, then you're not going to connect to your child, whatever he may be interested in. It's a very silly story. I mean, my son was interested in wrestling, and I can't stand wrestling. But I had to actually connect with him. I had to watch those horrible wrestling videos and know the names of the guys and know what they were doing, and then find a bridge to be able to connect with him. And one
Yeah.
day he turns around and says, "Why don't you marry a wrestler after my divorce?" I said, "That's going too far."
Yeah. No, but here you're trying to, as you rightly pointed out, that this bridge needs to be established. But again, like it's always seen from a lens that what's the outcome, right? While for me, a learning is a journey, like acquiring knowledge is a journey. So how do you establish the incentive, right?
Oh, yeah, but you know what? I mean, if your child or your friend, whoever, finds juice in that relationship, in that conversation, then they will keep coming back. So the incentive is, I mean, there is a certain space for that person to express oneself. You see, mostly people are being judged all the time. So the first thing is, if you want to nurture a relationship, you have to take off those preconceived notions and start listening and making space for the person to be whichever way they are, any which way, good, bad, ugly, accepting exactly as they are and exactly as they're not. Then they find space. When they find space, then they want to be with you. So the incentive is really to nourish and nurture relationships. So that's a way out.
Okay. And if I have to just not a word play, but further double down on this difference between learning, knowledge, and wisdom, how would you look at these three terms?
Knowledge is just, I would say knowledge is more like information. Yeah, there's a lot of information available on the net now. Some of it is fake, some of it is authentic. We used to go to search the encyclopedia. So that is all knowledge. Yeah, that there's no learning there and there's no wisdom there. Now,
Hmm.
learning is, as I said, being open to absorbing things and knowing about things. But knowing definitely doesn't make a difference unless you apply. So we say knowing makes no difference. Now, everybody knows how to be a good citizen, how to be a good father, a good husband, a good everything. Everybody knows a good country, everybody knows everything. At least they think they do.
Hmm.
But there is no wisdom there. So,
Hmm.
the wisdom is, I would say, when you're able to apply what you know and what you've learned and make it meaningful in your life or useful in your life, useful and meaningful in your life, I think that's wisdom.
Hmm.
I know
Hmm.
this is again very simple, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's how I relate to it.
So we'll move to the next part, is that how these learning, how this, not knowledge, now that you have established learning is kind of understanding the knowledge that is being added into your consciousness. So what do you think the role of films are, right? Like how does films or art enable or influence learning?
Well, now when you say films, there's a very wide spectrum. And if you're talking of Indian films, and if you talk of Hindi films or Bollywood, it becomes a very, very narrow spectrum. Because what are they telling you? Now, I can tell you, because people they learn from films also. All this eve teasing never used to be there earlier, but eve teasing started watching all these heroes, or yeah, pen and chasing the girls and, going on stalking them. All that started after, because I've seen it in my life actually happening. Because I'm in a generation where I've seen from the very early days when we were working on celluloid to now digital and on mobile phones, you can make a film. So we have seen that whole space and how society has changed in that time. So there are things people are learning, styles in fashion they're learning. They're also learning. I mean, recently there was a discussion on TV, a debate about how this guy saw murder happening and he copied the murder. He actually did that, the pressure cooker murders or something like that. He said he was very inspired by that. So people are learning all kinds of stuff from cinema. But it's easier for people to pick up negative stuff rather than positive stuff. That is one of the things. Now, when you talk of art in general, there is so much to learn, there's so much to understand, there's a richness. But if your art doesn't have that richness inherently, then what are you going to do? Now, there are films which leave you so happy, so, in a very happy state of mind. Now, there are comedies, but there are all kinds of comedies. There's humor and there is slapstick and there's all kinds of comedy. Now, for me, when films say we are about entertainment, but engagement is also entertainment. If you can engage someone, it's not the silly song dance and going down the trees and with 20 people fighting with one guy and he beats them all. So that's not necessarily entertainment. Engaging is very important. So if your films are engaging, if a poem catches your eye, you read that through and you see something which you didn't see before, even a painting, and you keep looking at it and you start seeing something or it touches you somewhere. You may not understand the painting, but somewhere you feel drawn to it. Well, your life is getting enriched by something else. But the purpose why art is, there two things I see for art and is one thing is you're expressing yourself. The person who's creating that art is expressing himself. And the other thing is the person who's receiving it is receiving it depending on where they're coming from. Like when I do film appreciation classes, a lot of people come in having only watched Bollywood films. And now the unlearning starts over there. That this is not the be all and end all of cinema. So then I show them something and they're saying, oh, okay, this is another way of seeing things, another way of doing things. And then it just starts expanding. So I think thing is media has actually films. I mean, that's why what I've done is now in my mind, I've separated films and filmmaking from cinema. Cinema for me is an art. Filmmaking may not be. These films which are made for commercial purposes, where the sole reason for making that film is to get a few hundred crores. So that the art is dead. Because, I mean, if you see most of these very, very commercial kind of films, they're so inauthentic, they have nothing to do with life. And you go there, you resonate with something, you are touched by something and you go for that experience. So today, the experience of experience is also different. In your own room, in your house, something on OTT platform, or you see it in a theater, it's very different.
Correct.
So it actually spread out quite a lot. But I feel one of the things about art is, apart from your own self-expression, I think you want to leave something for someone to look at and sometimes want to be touched by it. For me, what is important, when I make a film, I want people to be touched by it, or I want people to be provoked to think about the issue, if I've got an issue in the film, or I want them to just maybe smile when they see a good relationship happening. There's something I want them to be touched by. And that's a very important thing when I make my film. I don't care about awards. I don't care. My money I have to recover because otherwise I can't make my next film. But it's not about making big money.
From a end user who's viewing it for entertainment, I have seen in the recent years there have been many movies which are more propaganda or more in your face entertainment, which is kind of influencing it at a very subconscious level, which people are not even registering it, like that's happening to them. And in due course of time it will emerge, it will acceptance to certain non-acceptable things will be very norm. So is there a filter for an audience to gauge, to evaluate? But because if you put that, then you're also not open to learning. So it's a
right.
Yeah.
I think it's a process that society is evolving. Like, for example, take violence and brutality in cinema. It's come so naturally to people now to get angry and bring out your frustration on anybody for any small thing. there is no control. But this is, again, as I said earlier, also what they learn from films and so on. And the thing is, also, it's because of the mirror neurons. What
Hmm.
happens when we talk of mirror neurons? Your neurons are also firing. You're seeing that something happening on the screen, and your neurons are also firing the same way as you watch. So, like, I've done a lot of films on the autistic,
Hmm.
the mentally challenged and autistic, we call them special people. But in that also, why do they put these autistic people with the Down syndrome people? Because the Down syndrome people are very gregarious and very high flying kind of this thing. So when these islands are put together with those overly overactive, hyperactive kind of characters, something begins to shift for them. So normal, I'm saying so-called normal, whatever, when you go to the theater, there's a fight happening and your mirror neuron, even if you see somebody skiing down a slope, then your mirror neurons are firing the same way. So you tend to pick up things from people. I mean, it's not only in films, but also in real life. Because that is why, if you remember, there used to be a saying in they don't have go with bad company. Galat Sangat is bad company. If you spend time with bad company, you will become like them.
Hmm.
And that's because human beings take from each other.
Yeah, even I can add there, as my observation is that it's almost everything that you're eating is not just through mouth but through five senses, and everything is going inside. So this constant awareness of what you're engaging with is very, very critical these days.
Yeah, that's right. And when most people are not even looking at what they're engaging, and then what you said, like
Hmm.
people are just absorbing everything, and after some time, they become that.
Taking the earlier example, should the teacher be punished? In this case, should the filmmaker have more responsibility? Like, because you have made films which are very sensitive in nature, I wanted to understand your thought process of, or any example that inspired you to make things or films like these as a responsible filmmaker.
For
Yeah.
example, why I personally feel filmmakers have to be responsible. Because you're putting it out for people to pick up. Youngsters pick it up, old people pick it up at their own levels, whatever it is, and people are picking up stuff. So I think you have to be responsible as a citizen, as an artist. I mean, you're not painting something for yourself and keeping it in your house. You're
Hmm.
putting it out for people and they are going to get impacted. So I do not buy this thing about it's not our responsibility. People, filmmakers say that it's not I'm not supposed to be responsible. But aren't you responsible for the people around you? So that's one part. Now, what inspires me is things that engage me deep enough that I feel like doing something about it, or some stories that have kind of had an impact on me in some way. For
Hmm.
example, my last film, Firebrand. I mean, for years, I was so disturbed by this whole Nirbhaya thing when the rape happened. And everybody's talking about the rapist, everybody's talking about law, everybody's talking about everything except the person who was the victim or survivor. Now, what about that person? So, I used to lead the Landmark Forum at one point as a forum leader. And that time, I would engage people to speak about their personal experiences, whatever was a stop in their life. Something was a barrier in their life. So now you have to, if you want to live life 100%, you have to demolish those barriers or at least be aware of those barriers. And then
Hmm.
people started sharing, a lot of women started sharing about their abuse. And then the men started sharing about their abuse. And in a matter of a few minutes, you could actually have them have closure or completion. And there are exercises I found that you can do so that they can have that. So don't they deserve a decent life, 100% life? So that prompted me to actually make Firebrand, in which this woman who's a lawyer, she's a divorce lawyer, and she fights for women's rights. And yet she herself is incomplete because she was abused. But the thing is, what happens is, I'll tell you one more thing, what happened in the film is very often something happens in the film and the filmmaker starts explaining it happened like this and what they thought. So this time I thought, let me not explain it and let me just leave it where it is, put it to the people. Now, when a person gets raped, there are two ways they might go. Either they become punish themselves by getting involved more and more into unwanted relationships and sexual engagement, or they might withdraw altogether.
Hmm.
Now, the thing is, I chose the latter. I said she withdraws. And then suddenly, at one point of time, with a stranger, kind of stranger, not a person she knows very well, something begins to happen, some kind of chemistry, and she wants to explore. So now question is, doesn't a person have right over their own body to explore something that is happening inside them? That was first question. Secondly, the woman was raped at 15. and she had not even experienced anything sexual or her own sexuality. And now, suddenly at 35, she's experiencing something with some guy who's not her husband. So, are we going to punish her for that? So, she becomes 15 in that moment. Some people got it and some people didn't get it because I did not explain. That doesn't matter. The thing is, they have to find a way of how can she do that? Become moralistic. How can she be with another man when she's married? Of course, she had already brought up the point of divorce. But the thing is, she became 15 in that moment. For the first time, that touch made a difference to her and she did whatever she did. So I don't know if you've seen the film, but anyway, so
I've seen.
these are things
Yeah.
we engage with. Yeah, no, then was another film I made on black magic. Now you'll say a horror film. Why black magic? Now that's a very strange thing to make. Now, I mean, in my childhood, I saw a lot of black magic going on. So that was, there was a curiosity and there was a story there, and I wanted to spell out the story. You know, something that engaged me and had a lot of questions. And the thing, finally, the conclusion I came to is don't mess with all these things. It's dangerous.
Yeah, this is very profound because I've been talking to a lot of people around the same theme of learning, and it all starts with personal curiosity. So just extending that, I've seen Firebrand and I'm like, it's just an amazing movie. Learning also has to have a moral angle to it because in, as you mentioned, right, like people must have spoken about, oh, this is whatever chastity and other things. So does it need to have any moral angle always, or it just part of the learning and morals are self-own values? Is there a paradigm there?
Yeah, actually, morals are what society created. When God made human beings, if you believe in God or universe or whatever, there were no those kind of rules over there. All these things were, marriage was man-made, chastity is man-made, and chastity applies to women but not to man. How come? Yeah, so it was all double standards, and that's what was Rihai. That was because the double standards were disturbing me. So I made a film. I don't know if you've seen Rihai. Rihai
No.
was about the repressed sexuality of women. So that was a film which came out in the 90s, and everybody said it's way before its time. And it's so bold, and a woman has made it. Oh my God, it was like really something. But I made it because at that time I felt strongly about it. And I had a good cast. Vinod Khanna, Hema Malini, Nasiruddin Shah, Nina Gupta, and Neela Guna. All these people were there. So that worked. And people still watch that film and they said it's still relevant today because the double standards still exist. The thing is, morals, you have to be responsible for your own morals. I mean, you know, sometimes people do things they do, but who has a right on anybody else, to be very honest? Everybody has a life of their own. They have a trajectory of their own. But at the same time, as long as you're not, I think, harming anybody or disturbing anybody or messing with anybody else's life, I think your model should be your own. But I don't think anybody has a right to judge. No, because at the same time, I would not put, you can't talk about killing like that. See, there are standards. There are standards in society, and they are what is accepted and not accepted. Like to kill is wrong, but a soldier has a license to kill when he's in battle. So there are always levels of, and these are all standards and judgments. That each society creates a certain level of standards and judgments, every society. And you operate within those parameters is possible. But sometimes you break those parameters, well, too bad. You break it, and then you may get ostracized or you may get live on the fringes. But that's something, a cost, unfortunately, people have to pay for being independent or being experimental or being whatever.
And are there films have made you unlearn a lot of things? Because I saw a very beautiful short film, or like a, not a short film, but like a 45-minute film where there's a Muslim Kasai type banda. And because of this overall, I saw it on Mubi, and because everything happens and there is changes in social dynamics, the job is gone away. Now this person has entirely lifelong done the same thing, and now they don't have any job. So it made me realize that some professions, like, you can't change tracks after some point in life, and then you don't create situations where these people are hampered, right? So are there, and that gave me a very different type of unlearning and learning together. So are there any films or any incidents where you have understood the power of unlearning?
Well, one of the things is power of unlearning, I will say. Like I was doing a film on the Devdasis of the Yellamma temple. Now, I don't know whether you know about them. They have Maharashtra-Karnataka border. There is a temple, Yellamma temple. And they dedicate little girls to the goddess. And what happens to little girls is they are literally raped and then abused, and then finally sold to Kamatipura red light area in Bombay. That is their future. And they carry those baskets with the goddesses' figurines on their head.
You have seen.
Now, this was a film, it came to me, somebody offered me that film, and I said, I will do it because this is a very important engagement. Now, we had to go and do some research in the red light area. And everybody told me, you don't go. You send your male assistant to do that. And I was very stubborn. So I said, no, I will go myself and see what's going on over there. I want to see those women. I want to see all of them. And they tried to persuade me, but I went. And I completely realized that society has such a weird, twisted view about the whole thing. Most of those women are trafficked and they're abused and they're there. And I realized the humanity part of it. I realized how they're doing what they're doing. And that is their lifeline. They're earning their living like that. And they're sending money home. And the people back home in the village don't know what they're earning and what's the job they're doing. And they're constantly, they're raids and they're apprehended in the police station also. Same kind of thing happens. And one thing I learned also, everything I knew about prostitution, about the commercial sex workers, everything dismantled. They were human beings. And for me, they are angels. I believe today I could respect them as angels. Because if they were not there, we would not be safe in our homes. The women would not be safe in their homes. They take care of all this floating population and everybody who wants to just have it for the sake of having it. So they are servicing them. And otherwise, the men have so much, that kind of desperateness to do what they need to do. They would attack any woman. Women would not be safe. Mothers, wives, daughters, whoever you want as so-called respectable homes would not be respectable if those women were not there. So for me, they are angels. Big unlearning for me.
Also, in certain countries, I can't call them evolved countries, but developed countries, there are these prostitution and these things legalized and proper tax structure and everything. So it's more formal so that there is a way to channel whatever instincts you have and give a respectable, dignified job to those people. And it's a part of society. So it's a little taboo to talk about it also, but you can't just sweep it away.
Yeah, I agree with you because I remember in the 70s discussing with Vijay Tendulkar, the well-known writer, playwright, discussing this issue with him and how it should be legalized. Because we used to share a lot of stuff because if you're a writer or a filmmaker, there's no place you should hesitate to go into. You should be willing to go into any place and find out for yourself the truth of the matter. And even then it may not be the truth. It may be your view at the end of it. So who knows the truth? I mean, it's a perspective eventually which makes you think it's the truth. But at least what is there. So unless you see it for yourself. Now, as filmmakers and writers, you can't have every experience. And then, of course, you kind of depend on a second-hand experience or a testimonial or somebody who's been through that. Because you can't go through everything to write about it or to, do whatever, make a film. But at least you can get as close to that situation and see what it is.
Yeah, speaking about Vijay Tendulkar, I had the fortune to have Ramu Ramanathan on the show. And we have done a 2-part series on Vijay Tendulkar. So I'll add that link and also share you after the show.
It was quite amazing. We used to talk a lot about so many things. He was also part of the writing, that horror film I told you about. He was with us, my ex-husband, myself, and Vijay Tendulkar. We wrote the script together. And then there were other scripts we were working on. And we used to meet and go and have a lunch somewhere and talk a lot. And sometimes he'd come over, we'd talk. And it was very interesting to engage with him. Now, one of the things about Vijay Tendulkar was, which I also feel is important, is the ability to question things. You must question things. You can't take everything as is. So, which allows you to again unlearn and learn. The process is interesting. Like what Socrates would say, they would say, ask questions. You may not have answers for it, but keep asking questions.
Yeah, in fact, art in general helps you frame questions better, gives a different perspective. And according to me, at least, the education system, the formal education system that at least I grew up in and generally people are growing up, I believe it to be like the biggest scam of 21st century. So if schools have to focus on learning and mainly asking questions, can films, can art from primary education, any thoughts around how can films and art be part of it?
For years, I'm telling you, for years, I've been telling them to have film appreciation in schools. Show them films, analyze and discuss. This is very critical. How long does it take? I mean, you're doing everything. You're doing your regular teaching, you've got your sports. So add one more element of art. I mean, especially cinema, because it's a living, live art, So them discuss so that, their lives are enriched and you understand better. And then people, the thing is, people make all these horrible Bollywood films and they say public की मांग है, public की मांग है. So I say public ने कभी बोला आपको ऐसा गंदा crap बनाओ. I'm saying all are not crap. Of course, not Bollywood films are not crap. I wouldn't say that. But there are a lot of films which don't work at all at any level, and they not only do, a few may be few may be hits, but most of them are flops anyway. So why are you following that formula? Try something. There is literally bankruptcy of thinking in this commercial cinema. Bankruptcy. So there's enough stories. The world is full of stories. If I start talking to you, I can take 10 stories out of you just listening to you. So it's like that. Everybody has a million stories. So there's enough material. World is not lacking in stories. So find something interesting and play with it and make it whatever. Vision.
And we are like a breeding ground of fake stories. So we are capable of making stories. Now, whether fake or otherwise, at least the story component is there. Maybe it can be channelized in the right way. Yeah. Okay, I'll conclude with one last question, is that you've been a life coach, a filmmaker. What would be your 2-3 key pieces of advice for young Indians, for parents, to learn better, to ask more questions, to watch good cinema, to learn to learn the things from cinema? Any takeaways for us?
I think you already said some of the things. I think first thing is to listen, to learn how to listen, so that the process of accepting things newly is there. Otherwise, you're stuck with your old rigidity, your old version of that's, I think, very important to listen. Second thing I would say, introspect. Introspect for yourself. Find out who you are. Why are you like that? I mean, how did you become? Why do you get so angry? What is your problem? Why you get so agitated? Why are you so anxious? Find out for your own self. And literally, because if you're not being judgmental, then there's a space for you to accept people. Secondly, you also work with your own self. Find out why you react the way you do, or what's missing in your life, or who you'd love to be that you're not, and what is your barrier. There's only you know best. If you're honest with yourself, you'll find out what's really missing, and you may need support. You can always take the support of somebody to do that. And the third thing that you also said is questioning everything and remembering that opinion is not the truth. Opinion is an opinion. And truth, it may be something, fact may be something, actuality may be something, reality may be something else. So as long as I shoot my mouth off, I must remember it's my opinion. So it's all right. And there's place for other people's opinions then. Otherwise, my way or the highway.
No, that's very dangerous.
You lose people in your life by being that.
Okay, ma'am. I think we can conclude on this note. Thanks a lot for giving your time. It was a privilege talking to you, and I enjoyed the conversation a lot. Thanks once again for joining.
No, but that's the way you ask questions and the way you are that allows a person to speak so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
What an outstanding conversation with Aruna Raje. I hope this conversation sparked new questions and perspectives for you. Her wisdom on learning, unlearning, and power of cinema to shape minds seems transformative. If this episode resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the GYAN Project for more conversations with Indian creative luminaries. All links we discussed from Aruna Raje Films to our social media handles are awaiting you in the show notes below. And a small request. Please share this episode with your friends, family, fellow creators, or anyone who believes in power of lifelong learning. And please drop a comment. Tell us what struck you the most, what you agreed, what you disagreed, and which part made you think differently. Your engagement helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep growing. This is Kedar Nimkar, signing off from the GYAN Project. See you in the next one.